everyone. Today I would like to have a conversation with you guys about psychedelics. Now, I keep getting censored and my accounts keep getting deleted. Sometimes I just delete them myself, but I think it's time to talk about this subject. Why I haven't sat down and specifically talked about this? Honestly, the main person being my, surrogate mother has called me crazy for years ever since I tried LSD for the first time. And I guess subconsciously it has scared me into not talking about it because I guess deep down I believe that everybody was just going to think I was crazy and nobody would really understand. I've talked about videos talking about narcissistic mothers, and that hasn't really gotten me anywhere. I think I'm going to continue talking about how to deal with a narcissistic mother. I need to do more research on the psychology behind that. But I think that me talking about my psychedelic experience is kind of the most productive thing I can do at this point to add to the conversation of everybody calling me a drug addict, a homeless drug addict that's lost her mind. So that's the rumor that's been in my hometown in Dixon County ever since I tried LSD for the first time. The rumor was that I did, hard drugs and lost my mind, dropped out of school, and ever since then I've just been insane. So I would like to not even clear up rumors because I don't care about rumors, but maybe this conversation can spark education and enlightenment, and there could stop being so much ignorance around the subject, and we could start a conversation that's going to help young people struggling with PTSD and depression, and LSD can even help people struggling with alcoholism, believe it or not. So let's just talk about the first trip that happened, and I've tripped maybe about 10 or 15 times, so this is going to be a couple part series, but we'll start from the beginning. So the first drug I ever took, I never even really took cough medicine. I was never prescribed meds as a kid. I never had mental health issues as a kid, but I did experience an extreme amount of trauma. I saw my mother go through domestic violence. We experienced homelessness, poverty. Not only that, but when I got older, I witnessed my mom and stepdad being alcoholics. They abused animals. They didn't physically abuse us, but they did work us like, you know, because they never physically hit, well, they never physically hit me. They hit Tony, but sometimes Chase, and they would hit each other. But allowing your children to experience domestic violence, leaving them homeless, teaching them to be addicts and alcoholics, and then when they get addicted to drugs, telling them they're an addict when you're the one that taught them to use drugs, because alcohol is still a drug. So, but anyways, so the first trip I ever had, the first drug I ever took was weed. I started smoking weed when I was about 17 because I started dating this guy that was a drug dealer, and I was a very good girl. I wanted to save myself for marriage, and I remember at 14 telling my mother, telling my surrogate donor, I would like to save myself for marriage. And she said, wait till you see what it feels like. You're not going to be able to say no. So at a certain point, I realized that waiting until marriage wasn't a big deal to the surrogate. So drinking, partying, all that seemed like a normal part of life. And that's when the spiritual warfare started. When I had my spiritual awakening, I had a spiritual awakening before I ever tried a drug when I was 14, because I went to church camp and felt the Holy Spirit. And so when I gave my life to Christ, even at 14 years old, that's when the spiritual war started. And I thought that's why it's so important to separate yourself from the world as a Christian and don't be all up in the world, because the world will have you convinced that certain things are normal. That's not normal. So as a teenager, I watched TV, I paid attention to my friends. I thought drinking and partying and all that stuff was normal. So I didn't want to be a Christian anymore. I wanted to have sex, I wanted to drink, I wanted to party. And guess what? When I had sex, when I started doing drugs, all of a sudden I got popular. But so the first drug I tried was weed, because I heard that weed wasn't that bad for you, that it couldn't really hurt you. So I started smoking weed. When I first started smoking weed, I would just fall asleep all the time. But I could never stay up. I would just fall asleep every time I smoked. Now I stay up when I smoke, but sometimes I get anxiety if I smoke too much. But I never had anxiety when I started smoking. I would just smoke and it would put me to sleep. So I would smoke weed, and then eventually I looked up drugs that are not bad for you because I'm an empath. I figured out that I was an empath. I thought that feelings and emotions were interesting, and so I wanted to know what other drugs were going to make me feel like, because weed made changed my emotions and my feelings. So the fact that it changed my feelings made me curious to what other span of emotions and feelings can I feel. So I researched drugs that aren't bad for you, and all of a sudden, all these articles about psychedelics come up. And I asked, the boyfriend at the time, I'm like, have you ever heard of LSD? And he was like, actually. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I took it. And I'm like, what was it like? And he was like, well, I thought I figured out the whole universe. Like, I forget what it was now. But at the time I felt like it makes you feel like you know everything. And I'm like, okay, so I never heard of this before. It was the first time I ever heard of LSD. And a lot of people have never heard of it. And there's a lot of ignorant people that say if you take LSD, you're going to jump out of a window. Yeah, bro, when I get to the New York Times best-selling book office and I get to the top of one of these skyscrapers, I'm going to jump out the window because of the LSD. Seriously. All right, it's my time to go. Break the window, jump out onto the street. Seriously. But, it's not true that LSD makes you lose your mind. It's not true that LSD is this scary drug. I know it's called acid, but it's not literal battery acid that we're drinking here. There's a piece of paper you put on your tongue. It comes in gel form. I think the real truth about why all my, the surrogates friends keep talking about this is because they really want to try it. Well, let me tell you, I think that's what it really is, that they really want to try it. Well, this is the thing about psychedelics in general. You can hear, if you ever hear a story that somebody had a bad trip, or, that psychedelics are evil, and no. This is how the medicine works. It's not a regular medicine that you take. Psychedelics, plant medicine, LSD is not the original plant. It's made in a lab, but it's still plant medicine. There's LSD. Weed is a very small plant medicine. Then it goes mushrooms, LSD, there's DMT, there's ayahuasca. I've never taken DMT, I've never taken ayahuasca, but I was saving up money to go take ayahuasca. I still want to take ayahuasca. So I think there's other psychedelics, I don't know. Molly, I think, is a psychedelic. So the thing about psychedelics, it's not just a regular medicine that you take. Psychedelics is what they believe turned the monkeys into human beings. So they believe that the monkeys took a bunch of mushrooms and turned into humans. And I believe that could be possible. Throughout history, psychedelics have been the cause of pretty much every invention that you see around you, honestly. It's been a portal for aliens to give ideas to human beings and invent things in the world. Entire religions have started because of psychedelics. They theorized that the story in Genesis about the forbidden fruit is about psychedelics. So to spread this lie and this misinformation, and to keep on with this lie and misinformation that I'm just this crazy drug addict, when after I've been through so much trauma, drugs is usually what people turn to, and thank the Lord that it was not any hard drugs. LSD, psychedelics in general, if you do the research, which I have sent her multiple times, the science behind it, and she ignores the science and wants to keep on with this lie and misinformation that I'm just this drug addict. I researched the LSD before I ever put it in my body. I did a lot of research. So I hear this story from he's not even a boyfriend, the creep, about his experience with LSD. So I do research, and I research trip reports, and I just read all these experiences of people saying it's the most profound thing that's ever happened to me. I saw this happened to me, and it was foreign to me. I'd never heard of it, but I realized that I had to try it. And what really made me try it was I read this article about Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs said that LSD was one of the most profound experiences of his life, and if he never would have taken LSD, he doesn't think that the Apple iPhone would have ever been invented. So Steve Jobs used to trip all the time. There's many people that take LSD, people you worship and look up to that take LSD. So, how many, Janae Aiko's taking LSD, Diplo take LSD. There's songs and music about it. The main reason I tried it was because of Steve Jobs, and because I always knew I had this longing to do something important and to have some type of profound experience in my life, and it felt like the profound experience I was looking for through the Bible, through some type of religion and spiritual experience. And I wanted to experience something very profound. It felt like everything around me was just fake, and I wanted something deeper. So I took it. So the first time I tried LSD, I was 17 years old. It was the summer after I graduated high school, right before I went to college. It was around July. Actually, it's July now. So what happened when I took it? I actually never had a bad trip. So my mother actually tries to tell people for me that I've had bad trips when she's never even taken LSD, and she wasn't even there when I tripped. And she keeps on saying, like, she says it over and over, like, oh, you just had a bad trip and now you're scared, aren't you? I'm like, no, bro, I've never even had a bad trip. What are you even talking about? Like, one, you've never taken it. Two, you were never there with me. So what are you even talking about? Then she spreads the rumor that I've had a bad trip. Like, bro, she's crazy. But anyways, it's irritating. It's very irritating. But she just spreads this lie, like, oh, she's a drug addict and she's lost her mind. Bro, do y'all know what science is? Like, do you literally know how to use Google? Do you know how to Google stuff? Like, so LSD, I've told her this multiple times, it deals with PTSD. So she obviously wants me to still be traumatized from my childhood. Obviously, she's upset that I've healed from it. LSD, it deals with PTSD. If you have PTSD from domestic violence, it heals the amygdala complex in your brain. The amygdala complex in your brain deals with fear, what you are afraid of, paranoia, anxiety. So the LSD heals your brain and changes your brain neurons so that you think in a more artistic way. It changes your brain neurons so that you are a part of the Gaian mind, which means nature. You are now in a mindset of living in the forest because you're connected to the trees and the plants. You walk around this big city and you ever tripped before, you're going to notice the nature and the trees more than the buildings. People who've never tripped, you can tell because they're walking around, all they see is buildings. They don't even notice the trees. I'll tell you, when I tripped for the first time, one of the first things I noticed was the trees. And for some reason, when I saw the trees, I just started crying. It was almost like I was living in black and white, and that day everything turned to color because it was almost like these trees were in the background watching me the whole time, and I didn't realize that they were conscious and alive and they could talk. And I've talked to trees while I was tripping too. I didn't realize that the trees were watching the whole time, and it felt like running into an old friend, and I just started crying because I recognized that the trees have always been here the whole time. But what point I want to make before I talk about this is, if anybody's ever told you they've had a bad trip, you can tell they're a bad person. I have never had, quote unquote, a bad trip. I just never have. I've always had good experiences with LSD and psychedelics. If you are a bad person, you will have a bad trip. End of story. Your heart is weighed on a feather when you go into the spiritual realm. So if you have hate in your heart, if you have, negative emotions, don't do it. This is the thing. That means you're a bad person if you had a bad trip. Pretty much that's what it means. These medicines are medicines that the Native Americans took and that indigenous people take that live in the jungle. These medicines are the type of medicines that people used before there were hospitals and doctors. This is how shamans and jungle people healed themselves. This is what Native Americans took. So the Native Americans, after you take the psychedelics, now you're in a magical fairyland of the woods. And they're living in a magical fairyland of the woods all the time, just taking psychedelics. So it puts you into nature. It's a plant medicine, so it connects you with nature. If you are in the realm of nature, it is a completely different reality than this normal world. If you go into the woods, there are all type of and at night especially, you will hear all type of animals, spirits. And if you go into the deep woods or no one is there, that's when miraculous things and spirits can happen, and you see scary stories of like really ghosts and stuff will pop up in the woods, because really in the woods, it really is a whole different world in the woods. So when you take psychedelics, people that have had a bad trip, they have a bad trip because they're a bad person. It's pretty simple. Like, if you have a bad trip, that's the universe trying to tell you something about yourself. If you see a scary monster, you're seeing yourself. If some scary demon comes up to you and gets in your face, that's you. That's something you're doing. That's something you're doing to people. Like, that's you, bro. Like, oh, this scary demon came up to me. Like, I hate when people are like, oh, I was a Christian, and then I tried mushrooms, and I astral projected out of my body, and I saw myself sitting there, and I started screaming and said, Jesus, please save me. And then I went back in my body. I never astral projected again. Like, you freaking rookie? Like, oh, you astral projected, and now you're scared? Like, bro, I can't stand when people are Christian and they get into witchcraft and they see one ghost and they're like, now I'm back with the Lord Jesus. Like, bro, whatever, bro. But anyways, so, I've never had even a slightly bad trip ever. So if you have a bad trip, it's the universe trying to get you together. That's why, you don't trip when you try most of the time. You don't trip when your bills aren't paid. You don't trip when you're not handling your responsibilities. You don't trip when you don't have your stuff together. If you know you're in trouble with God, and you did something wrong by the universe, and you trip, then yeah, the gods and the spirits are going to get onto you. But if every time people try to say I'm a drug addict, I'm irresponsible, I can't take care of my responsibilities. I have rented 2 apartments and paid my rent on time every month for 2-year long leases, and paid my bills and lived alone. I know how to work a job and handle my responsibilities. I just don't want a normal job. That doesn't mean I'm not responsible. I'm very responsible. I don't trip when, believe it or not, I don't just trip when my life is out of order. And if my life is out of order and I'm tripping, it's for me to get it back in order. But, it's not something that you take lightly. Y'all think it's drug and alcohol. It's not a normal party drug. Psychedelics is not a party drug. Let me tell you that much. Psychedelics is not something you want to go to like a little party and just get high because you have a bad time. Psychedelics is an ancient, indigenous, sacred thing that needs to stop being lied about and disrespected. Psychedelics is something that you do. You can do it alone for the first time and you're probably completely fine. But for the first time, I would try to get at least an animal with you, like a dog or a cat. But at least some type of friend that you trust. It's kind of hard to find even one person that you trust nowadays. If you can't find no one you can trust, you can take it alone. You'll be okay. But I would try to find a friend that you trust to take it with you or to watch you while you take it. You're supposed to, first time you try it, you're supposed to do it alone. And you don't want to take it around someone that you don't like, someone that's, has ever betrayed you, someone that's not a good person. You want to take it around someone that you're comfortable around. Get, fruit, water, get snacks. You probably won't be hungry, but just in case, get some fruit, water, snacks. Pick some good cartoons you want to watch. Some, good, funny movies. You can watch scary movies if you've done it a couple times. I wouldn't watch scary movies. I would watch like SpongeBob or cartoons or something funny, and get some weed and smoke. But so the first time I ever took LSD, this is what happened to me. So me personally, I took it, right, we got it. And he got some for us. So we're sitting in his trap house. So I take 1 tab. I think he took 2. And I took half of one later. So I start falling asleep. And I start feeling like I'm going into a portal. And I wake up and I look at the TV. And there's like fairies. I see this like going in a circle on the TV. Like a portal on the TV. And I see fairies going around in a circle. And like, did you just see those fairies come out the TV? He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, there was fairies. They just came out the TV. He's like, I didn't see nothing. I'm like, oh, snap. So I start dozing off, going to sleep, and I wake up, and I'm like, bro, we're time traveling. And he looked scared. He was like, what are you talking about? I was like, we're time traveling. He's like, we're black. I don't know if you want to time travel, bro. I was like, oh, and I thought about it. I'm like, we are black. I was like, dang. So you're right. And I got kind of scared. I was in the house. I ain't never scared to go back in time because I was in the house. You know what I'm saying? I was in the house the whole time. You know what I'm saying? So I ain't scared to go back in the rearrange furniture and get my pack glued out. Let's go. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, so little scary little man. We're black. We're with top travel. But anyways, so what's that supposed to be? But anyways, so I got a little spooked out. I'm like, oh, dang, and I was thinking about it. And like I just started feeling like dizzy, like my brain is like activated, right? And I'm just like, I want a math problem. I want to think about something. I don't know. I just want to think about some high shit. You ever get high? You ever think about how the stars get calculated? That's how you do when you get LSD. And then it feel like you just said the smartest stuff you ever said. Like you ever think about the stars in the moon? And whoa, 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 like. You start just figuring out stuff, man. I figured out so much stuff I can't even tell you what I figured out. And I remember what I figured out. But I had a lot of conversation with the aliens. But anyways, so it's hard to explain the words. It really is. It's hard to explain in language. But so I took it right. I keep dozing off, and I wake up, and he just staring at me, like just staring at me. I'm like, "What you looking at, man?" He's like, "I'm just looking at you." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." So we tripping is kicking in, and the time went by fast. What happened? We was just talking for a long time. We was just talking. I got on the floor. We started playing on the floor like we was little kids, and then at a certain point, I don't know if he was gaslighting me or if he was really confused, but at a certain point, I was trying to tell him something. I forgot what I was trying to tell him, but I was trying to talk to him, and I was like, "Look, like I think I was saying we have to go get food, or like I want a blunt or something." I was like, "Look, we need to go do this," and I don't know if he was gaslighting me and trying to mess with me while I was high, but he was like, "What?" And I was like, "We have to go to the food. We have to go to the store and get food." He was like, "Huh?" I'm like, "We have to go to the store and get food." He's like, "What?" And then it was like he was speaking a different language or something. He was like, "Ding dong ding bing bong beep 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 boop beep 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 boop beep 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 boop beep 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 beep." And I was like, "Huh?" He was like, "Huh?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "What are you talking about?" And I don't know what happened, but for a moment there, I don't know if he was messing with me or if like our language got cut out and it started crossing like wires. He's swallowing. He's scared. I personally think he was messing with me and he knew what I was saying, and he was like not even trying to be funny, like he was genuinely trying to drive me insane. Because I was literally speaking English, and I'm like, "Bro, like I'm telling you 2 + 2 is 4." He's like, "Beep beep 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 boop boop beep beep beep," and I'm like, "Bro, so are men and women like we speak different languages or something literally?" And then I felt like, which is gross now, ew, but I felt like he was Adam and I was Eve, and I felt like we were like the first humans, and that was very profound to me at the time. Now it's disgusting, but at the time, well, yeah, and then I turned into Lilith and left and gave my own garden, but at the time I thought that was very profound. I was like, oh my gosh, like we are the first humans, you know what I mean? And I started thinking very cave woman like of like ancient, like the first woman, like trees and water and sun, like basic like things. Like I was like, water. I was like, ooh, water, sunshine, trees. Like it was like I time traveled back from like the cave days, and like everything was amazing to me again. But I said, your car. What's a car? Phone. You know what I mean? McDonald's. What's McDonald's? Oh, McDonald's. Like it just felt like I came back from a long time ago, and I was like, whoa, look at all this stuff. But so that was like after I tripped though. But while I was tripping, right? So, we were trying to understand each other, and then we went to go try to touch each other in the back room. So we go to the back room, and he pulls down his clothes, and it was just like soft, like it wouldn't get up. And I was trying to like talk to him, and then I was like, "Let me show you what I'm trying to say." And then he just started giggling, and like it wouldn't get up. And at the time, I was keeping funny. Now it's like, oh, that's how it should have always been when you're talking to a child. So maybe that's what the universe is trying to tell you. Like, oh, it should have been soft in the first place if a girl's 17. Because I can't even get excited over a 17-year-old when I'm 22. Ew. But it wouldn't get like up when I was trying to do that while we were high, and it just wouldn't get up. So, and he was just laughing. So it's kind of disgusting now. But yeah, he was jealous of my experience. That's happened to me multiple times. I trip with someone, they get jealous of what I'm experiencing, and they start giving me evil eye, or they start trying to mess with me while I'm tripping. That so eventually I start tripping alone. But yeah, he was obviously like jealous because that was my first psychedelic experience. He had taken psychedelics multiple times before. He said he stayed up for like 5 days straight and kept tripping and still is dumb. And that's the other thing about LSD. Just because you take LSD doesn't mean you're going to get famous and all this stuff. It could help you be a better artist. Yes, it helps you be more creative, of course. But I know people that have tripped over hundreds of times. I've only tripped maybe 15, maybe 10 times probably, but maybe 15 or 20 times. I know people that have tripped, like, they trip like every day for years, and they've tripped over 100 times, and they sit in their room and just trip every day, all day. And they've tripped 50, 100 times, and they are losing their mind. I wouldn't say losing their mind. I would say they've probably lost their mind. Because they just sit in their room and just trip every day. They don't go out in the world. They don't study. They don't apply it. Like, if you trip it's cool, but there's some people that get stuck in, would you say they're addicts? I don't know, but they just don't want to live in this world anymore. They don't want to be a part of it, which can be a dangerous place you could get to. But you could become, it's more than just drugs. You could go to India and be a guru and be just as happy, because they say that Indian gurus, one time someone that did psychedelics took psychedelics to a guru and gave it to him, and the guru takes the psychedelics and he starts tripping crazy like he's tripping. He starts laughing. He's like, I'm just kidding. He's like, this is what I experience through meditation every day. So some people, like, it's possible to trip through just meditation. You can get there spiritually. It's not just the drugs. It's not just a drug. So you could isolate yourself from the world and you could do something positive. You could go be a writer. You could write books and then just publish books and don't be on TV and be isolated from the world. You can go be a monk in India and isolate yourself in a cave and meditate all day. It's not good to just, take psychedelics all day and isolate yourself from the world, because you're going to be so emotionally sensitive to energy that you're not even going to be able to have a conversation with somebody. So I would recommend, you're supposed to take it, I think, about 4 times a year is the most you're supposed to take psychedelics. It's 4 times a year. I haven't taken it since October 2021. It's the last time I took LSD, when my daughter got taken from me, and I had a very profound experience that I will talk about. I've had many profound experiences, but to finish the first trip, so it's kind of hard to explain in words. It was 8 hours long, but it just seems like now it happened so fast. But we get out of the bedroom and he rolls us a blunt. He's like, all right, let's go like into town and stuff. So he's driving while he's high, not smart, but he's like, oh yeah, I can drive, whatever. He drives the car. And we go get food and we're smoking, and this music comes on. It's like classical, like Mozart, and it just made me cry. The music just was so beautiful. I just started crying, and I saw the trees playing to the music, and it just made me cry. So we get back and we just talked for like 8 hours and talked about the universe, and I just asked a bunch of questions. I was just asking, my inner child came out, and I was just playing on the floor and asking a bunch of questions that I never asked before. And stuff I never thought of. I'm like, wait, so if this is this, then why does people say this? Like, if this is this way, then how come it's this way? And it was like common sense stuff that was like, wait a minute, like, if this is real, then how come its leg is missing? You know what I mean? Like, I just started making connections, and like I said, LSD, it rewires your neural pathways in your brain. So it was like I almost felt my neural pathways kind of crossing paths into light and rewiring and asking questions I never asked. So when I went to college, I felt like my brain was like supercharged from the LSD. College was actually easy for me because of the LSD, believe it or not. But I had so much trauma from my childhood, added on to the trauma of my childhood, added on to Mary kept texting and calling my phone, telling me to come visit her, telling me that she missed me, that she couldn't live without me in college, and I felt bad for her. Worrying about my little brothers. I was going through a breakup with the creep that did that to me. My best friend stopped talking to me. So combined with everybody talking smack about me, combined with my trauma, and it was the triggers that really got me. It wasn't necessarily the original trauma. It was being triggered by the breakup, being abandoned. And what, the surrogate likes to say is, I took the LSD and instantly lost my mind and went crazy. No, honey. What caused the mental illness was the trauma to begin with. I already had PTSD, but I had suppressed it and not dealt with it, and went to school and never went to a therapist and never got diagnosed and never went to a doctor or a therapist for any of that stuff. And so what happened was, when I went to college, I got triggered mainly by exiting an abusive relationship. I got triggered, and I didn't lose my mind. I didn't become violent. I was just in my own world. I was very happy and in the spirits and in the trees, and I just wasn't paying attention to reality. I didn't really care about like anything people told me I was supposed to care about, and that made people really mad. I just wanted to go to heaven. Like, I just wanted to go to unicorn land. I was like, this world isn't real. Like, I want to go to heaven. I don't know what I want to do with my life, but this is not what I want to do. Like, if I would rather literally go back to heaven than sit in a cubicle all day, if this is what life is about. So I just wasn't doing what people expected me to do, and that was making them angry. But She tells a story that I took the LSD and lost my mind, and that's just not true. I had an extreme amount of trauma from witnessing domestic violence, not only witnessing domestic violence as a 4 and 5-year-old, but, thinking that it was all over and moving back in with my mom when she got custody of me and watching her be an alcoholic and taking care of and raising 2 boys that weren't mine, and to have them be mean to me after I just raised them, because if it was my son isn't going to be mean to me because he doesn't have some weird complex where he can't call me mom or whatever. Like, my son is actually going to be a gentleman because I'm actually going to raise my son. So, my little brothers, I would like to say they're my son, but you're not my son. I didn't push out. So, you want to not say you're my son, then you're not my son. You know what I'm saying? But, I just had a lot of responsibilities my whole life. I was the one that cooked and cleaned and took care of everybody in my house. So when I left for college, I felt like they weren't going to be able to make it without me because I was so responsible. Responsibility wasn't the issue. I was actually worried about everybody else when I left. So because of the domestic violence and then moving back in with my parents when I was, 10, and they got custody of me, and they were drinking every weekend and fighting and arguing, and they may not have physically hit us, but they starved us. And they say, oh, we didn't hit you, that's not abuse. They starved us, they were creepy towards us, they worked us like dogs, they didn't feed us proper nutrition, they abandoned us emotionally. So there was a lot of trauma that was leading up to a psychotic break, is what they called it. I wouldn't even necessarily call it that. I would call it psychosis. I would call it a breakthrough. I would call it breaking through. I would never have seen myself have a psychotic break where I just do something random and crazy for no reason. Everything I do is strategic. If it's a psychotic break, I broke through some type of spiritual glass door that nobody saw. But to them, they saw it as a psychotic break. But to me, I was doing some type of Santeria or voodoo to get rid of some type of energy. So, I don't think that I ever was mentally ill to begin with. I think I had PTSD and trauma, but like we said, LSD can completely heal PTSD, and it has healed my PTSD, and it's healing it. So I had a severe case of PTSD, and when you get triggered, which I had not gotten triggered in a long time and got some outside of my normal environment, so did I take drugs and lose my mind? No. I took LSD, which rewired my neural pathways, which was healing my amygdala, which was healing my PTSD, which brought forth to me my trauma that I needed to deal with. If I would not have taken that LSD, I would not have dealt with these traumas until maybe 30, 40, 50 years old in a therapist's office after I went through a divorce and had 4 kids and can't understand why my marriage won't work. I wouldn't have dealt with this stuff for years. So it may seem like it was bad because all of this trauma came out. But if I would not have dealt with what had happened to me as a child soon, it was going to just keep being suppressed. She's upset because everything that happened to me as a child was brought to the forefront, and she had to be accountable for how she raised me. She knew I had psychic abilities the whole time, and she made up the fact that I was mentally ill. What I had, I don't consider it a mental illness. At a certain point, you can label it certain things, but it's gone now. My mind is renewed and my mind is healthy. I am actually a genius. So, I wouldn't really have ever considered myself mentally ill. And another thing, if my daughter was a teenager and she just left high school and she just dropped out of college, and you know how it can be hard to make friends. You have your friends in high school and then you have your college friends. You don't need, if my daughter's 18 years old and she just left for college and she had a mental breakdown and decided to drop out of school, I would never post that on Facebook and say, hey guys, my daughter's in the hospital, pray for her. I just don't understand why she feels the need to get everyone else's opinion when dealing with me. That just shows that you're not a good mother. Because me personally, when it comes to my children, I'm not going to go to all my friends for advice about my children. Even my best friends, if I'm married, even my best friends that are married, I'm probably going to be a better couple than them, so I'm going to be judging their ass. Like, I'm going to be like, wouldn't do that, you know what I mean? I'm not going to go to you for advice about my kids, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are you, the police? Like, that's my kid, you know what I'm saying? Like, even your best friends, if you don't tell your best friends everything about your kid's personal business, why would you? That's weird. Like, you have your own life, you know what I mean? I just couldn't imagine being that age and my daughter being 18 and dropping out of school and having a mental breakdown. Even if she did, I wouldn't tell anybody because she's going to be famous. I would not publicize that to TMZ, that my daughter just dropped out of school and had a mental breakdown. Like, I wouldn't tell anybody, I would keep it a secret. And if she really had a mental health issue, I would take care of my daughter. She kicked me out to be homeless, to sell myself when I was depressed and suicidal, in the worst of my depression, when I was severely suicidal. She kicked me out to be on the streets when I wanted to not be here anymore. If my daughter had any type of illness, mental illness, and she came home from college, I would tell her to go back to her room and sleep as long as she needs to. And when she woke up, I would bring her fresh fruit. I would bring my daughter water. I would make my daughter tea with honey and lemon. And we would have a long talk. And I would ask her, what does she want to do with her life? And where does she want to go now? And does she feel like she's mentally ill? And if she is depressed, if I've never had depression, because whatever mental health issue I had, my mother screamed from the rooftops that she didn't have it and she's not as crazy as me and I'm the crazy one. So if I did have a mental health issue that you've never had, why do you keep running your mouth like you're the expert on it if you've never had it? She never listens to anything I say at all. For me, my daughter, I would sit down and ask her, so is it bipolar disorder? Then what happens when you get manic? Are you depressed? So why are you depressed and what does it feel like? I would ask my daughter about her feelings. She never once just had a conversation with me and just listened to me about what I was feeling or what I was experiencing or what was going on. She just yelled at me and barked at me and gave me commands. She never once just sat down with me and talked to me, and she never really does. But me with my daughter, I would take care of her. I would let her sleep all day. If she wants to be unemployed for 5 years, honey, that's her life, okay? That's her life. I would let her sleep for 5 years if she needed to sleep for 5 years and sleep it off and make her food, and I would cook her breakfast. I would cook her lunch. I would cook her dinner. I would make her chubby. I would feed that girl until she couldn't eat no more. And we would go get some tree, get some ganja. Let me tell you something. Go sit on the rocker chairs on the porch. Go feed the animals on the farm. Me and my daughter, we'd be some ganja, chill, listen to some music, go to the studio in the house, make some music, go to the gym, go get our nails done, go shopping, go down. I want to live in New York when I'm an adult. When I grow up, I want to live in New York. I want my kids to grow up in New York, Upper East Side for real. But, go on down Upper East Side, take it to the Louis Vuitton store, take it to the Gucci store. Come on now. I mean, to me personally, I just could never imagine treating my 18-year-old daughter like that. No matter what I have done wrong, it just wasn't justified. I just would never do that to my child, me personally. Like I'm saying, if she dropped out of school, why is it everybody's business what her mental health condition is? I wouldn't tell anybody she had a mental health condition. I wouldn't tell anybody. That's nobody's business, bro. Whether it was schizophrenia or bipolar or, depression, whatever it was, we would get through it. And I would read as many books as I could about that disorder. I would read as much as I could about that disorder and be extremely educated on what bipolar disorder is and when she has a manic episode, what does it mean when she has a manic episode? What is a trigger? What triggers her? How can I not trigger her? How can I protect her from environments and people and places that are going to trigger her? If my daughter really genuinely had a severe mental health disorder, I would do extensive research on that disorder, see what type of medications were available all over the world. If I could go to a different country and give her another medicine that would fix it for good. If my daughter seriously had bipolar disorder, I would seriously help her. I would not make her embarrassed and tell everybody that she's crazy and my daughter's mentally ill. Then you obviously don't really care, do you? And what disorder is it? Because you can't even keep to one. It was depression, then it's PTSD, then it's bipolar, then it's schizophrenia. What about DID? What about multiple personalities? I don't think I have schizophrenia. I think I have multiple personalities. Nobody said multiple personalities yet. But, stick to one diagnosis. What is it then? You know what I'm saying? So if I really had this diagnosis that was so bad, enough with the BS and the lies and then just trying to manipulate everything because you don't actually care. Like I said, if my daughter dropped out of school, like I said, I would let her sleep, man. Tuck her into her room, into her bed, light her some candles, clean her room for her, go pick up her room for her, turn on some cartoons, and get in bed with her and eat cereal and chill and smoke some tree while we're in bed eating cereal. And then probably trip too, right? It's a pipe. Put it on your tongue. and trip and figure it out. What's going on? How are we going to figure it out? What you want to do? And at a certain point, when I'm 50 years old, I'm going to just be laughing at her little problems, because guess what? I'm going to be 50 years old. I'm going to be a published author. You know, I'm going to be a healer. I'm going to have so much success and abundance and wealth that at 50 years old, if your 19-year-old is having a life crisis, every teenager has a life crisis. You're a teenager. Come on now. Every teenager thinks the whole world is falling apart, okay? When you're 18, you think the whole world is falling apart at all times. You think the sky is falling at all times, right? Let alone if you take dang psychedelics. You know, so, of course, when you're 18, you're going to have a mental breakdown. You're 18. Duh. Like, you know, if my daughter loses her ever-loving mind when she's 18, I'd be like, well, you know, that's being 18. You know what I'm saying? Like, does anybody else remember being 18 years old? You lose your mind. Like, like, you're 18, let alone 19. But, you know, every teenager is crazy. But, you know, so that's what happens when you're a teenager. So, you know, for me to be losing my mind and then her to not be helping and also losing her mind just don't help. When I'm 50 years old and my teenager's going through a life crisis, I'm going to just laugh and be like, look, everything's going to be okay. And that's kind of what my dad did, you know what I mean? But he took it serious because he knew I was really having a crisis. But, you know, I just laugh and be like, look, it's going to be all right. You know what I'm saying? But my mom just makes it worse, bro. Like, I'm 18 having a life crisis, and she's like, well, yeah, your life is falling apart. You are a failure. What are you going to do with your life? And you're a drug addict, too, and you're a failure, and now you're mentally ill, too. Like, oh, thanks, bro. Like, you're making it so much better. You really are. Like, when you're 50 years old and your 18-year-old is having a life crisis, you don't make it worse. Like, it's never going to get better. You're never going to be successful. They literally looked at me in the face and said, you will never be anything and you will never be successful. They looked at me and told me that. And I remember them telling me that. They said, you are nothing and you will never be nothing. Yeah, they said that to me. And they can lie. Maybe they were drunk. They don't remember it. But they say a lot of stuff when they're drunk that they turn around and say they don't remember. So, I'm nothing and I'll never be nothing. You know, when you're 18 and having a life crisis already, that's exactly what you need to hear, bro. Like, seriously. If my 18-year-old is having a life crisis, I'm going to just laugh. Because at that point, I'm 50 years old. I remember being 18 and I know it's going to be all right. But for her, it's just like, she just acted like, you know when a little kid thinks they're going to jail or something? And little kids obviously can't go to jail. And you're like, the kid is like 5, and you're like, I'm going to call the police on you. You stole candy, I'm calling the police and taking you to jail. That's what she tries to do to me. It was like I was a kid, you know what I mean? And it was like, she's like, you dropped out of college, and now we're coming to get you. Like, she was like, trying to scare me pretty much. And because I was a kid, I didn't really understand that everything was going to be all right. You know, like, when I was a kid, you know? So she tried to be like, I'm calling the boogeyman to come get you, and now you're done for and you're over with. Like, your life is over now. And so when you're 18, you're like, I still wasn't really scared, but I was just like a little concerned more than I should have been. Probably like, what am I going to do? You know what I mean? So it's just like, she's not a very comforting individual. She's not a very comforting person. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that was my first trip. How did it end? I was just asking questions all night, talking to the universe. And my inner child just came out, and I started dancing around like a fairy pretty much. And he said he had a vision that I left him or something. He was like holding his head. He was like, I have a vision. I'm like, of what? You can get visions? How are you having a vision? I've never had a vision. He said, I'm getting a vision of, he uses creeper cropper powers to get me. That's what he uses his creeper cropper bug eyes for. He's like a little bug with little bug antennas and bug eyes. He's got little supernatural little bug eyes, bug antenna powers. Like, ugh. But anyways, so yeah, I'm gonna get off of here. Well, just tell me if you have questions, and this is gonna be a long series because I've tripped like 10 times. But the first trip pretty much just woke me up. But there was also a very deep conversation to be had about everything that had transpired. So it was an awakening, but then there was more that was to be explained when I was actually sober. Psychic abilities, because once you trip, you're kind of tripping forever now. Like, and that's how some people go crazy, because once you trip once, you are kind of tripping forever, but not completely. But, you know, you always get into psychic downloads and stuff. So later, the spirits told me stuff that happened between my parents, But for the first awakening, it was kind of just like a welcome home party, like a surprise party, like a welcome home party. That's the best I can describe it. It was kind of just like a welcome home party. But anyways, that was my first trip back.